Hello! Welcome to Healthcare Triage Live. It's always an assumption that I'm actually on because I can't see it, but we'll just assume that it is true. Thank you as always for tuning in. We're very excited to be here. You may have noticed there was no Monday episode of Healthcare Triage. We've had some technical difficulties, people traveling, and while the episode is most of the way ready, we think we might just hold it for next week because at this point, now we're coming after live, and it's going to run up against news on Friday, and news on Friday is so good, we're just going to push it back a week. We apologize. We really apologize. That shouldn't stop you, of course, from watching other episodes of Healthcare Triage. You can watch the episode on IUDs from last week in preparation for the one on IUD myths for next week now. So there you go. As always, please check out our Facebook page, facebook.com/healthcaretriage. We have the Reddit community, which is going pretty strong. You can check that out. I can never remember the link. We'll put it in the stuff below. Check us out on patreon.com/healthcaretriage. We did a podcast with the people there that was very nice. We thank everybody as always for your support. Look, I have a microphone stand now. That's what your patronage does. So now when I hit the table like this, it won't destroy the microphone. See, everything is coming up roses. Yes, Mark will still yell at me, and I will still be in trouble, but at least it won't be as harmful for all of you at home. And that's because of all the wonderful people who support the show on patreon.com. This is what your patronage gets. As always, Healthcare Triage will be free, but if you can, become a patron, even if it's just for 1-2 months, we really do appreciate it. Links down below. And with that said, let's get started. Our first question, I got to scroll down, I'm looking at the wrong week. Inorganic Vegan asks, if there was only one improvement you could make to USA mental health care, what would it be? What's your top priority? And then Inorganic Vegan said some very nice things about the show, which we do appreciate. So there is no scientific answer. I guess you're asking me for my opinion. And my opinion would be I just wish we had more of it. We probably just don't have enough people providing mental health services to get to all the people who really require them. That can be very problematic. We're getting better about paying for it. Still people will argue that there's not true parity between mental and physical health when it comes to paying for healthcare, but for many people it is better. I can say anecdotally, it used to be a real pain in the butt trying to figure out which of my insurance plans would cover which therapists and, trying to make sure that everything was coordinated. And it has become noticeably easier in more recent years and not nearly as difficult to try to get payment for services. So I think things have improved. I can tell you as a pediatrician, I wish that I could refer to people to mental health care services more easily. So many times I see people in clinic where I'm like, there's no pill that I can give you to help. What people really need is therapy, and too few people get it. And of course, there's there are more severe mental health care conditions that get ignored too often, or we just don't know how to treat them, outpatient, inpatient, everything else. We just need to invest more in the infrastructure and more in the research and more in what we do. So we need more of it. That's my short answer. That's my long answer. Prior Walter asks, what are the long-term effects of nootropics or smart drugs? You guys ask this every week, which makes me concerned that you're all seriously way too interested in nootropics. So these are drugs people take to try to be smarter. A lot of them are supplements. I think you know how I feel about supplements. They're almost rare. They're rarely studied, totally unregulated for the most part. And I think a lot of times you're not getting what you hope you're getting. But sometimes there are drugs like methylphenidate or things that people take for ADHD because they do focus you more. And of course, those have the side effects and problems of taking, the drugs that you would take for ADHD in the long term. And we don't recommend that you take those drugs when you don't need them because they're serious. For kids that need them, the benefits outweigh the risks. But if you don't need them, then the harms can outweigh the benefits. And so I don't necessarily think it's such a good idea, until we have good proof. Some of the things that kids are taking, or even adults I should say, are taking, we just don't know what the long-term effects are because they're not well studied, and then you're just rolling the dice. I don't know. We don't know. And so I would keep asking you, why are you taking these drugs? Your study skills should be adequate without medicating yourself. We used to all go to school without taking such drugs. We took, I guess, other drugs, but those weren't always being sold as improving your grades. Having said that, so long-term effects we don't know or to negative, so don't do that. And when I said we, of course, I meant the population we, not the Aaron Carroll we. And while we're talking about disclaimers, nothing I say today should be constituted as medical advice. You should always talk to a healthcare professional before you do anything, take any drugs, do anything like that. So I will, answer questions, but if you want actual medical advice, talk to your healthcare professional. N Kicker asks, I've been told that milk thistle extract can be used to protect the liver from the damage of things like alcohol and NSAIDs. Is there research on this? We're getting on a theme here. So, look, you shouldn't be drinking so much alcohol that you're worried about liver damage. Don't do that. NSAIDs are concerning for a number of different things, mostly in the gut. Tylenol we worry about usually more for the liver. And again, you shouldn't be taking so much Tylenol that you're damaging your liver. In other words, don't take so much of any of this stuff that you need to worry about taking something to protect your liver. Having said that, milk thistle is often taken to help with liver disorders or to try to cure liver problems. There have been a number of bad studies or less robust studies that show some benefits to milk thistle. The actual prospective studies that have been done are much more equivocal and conflicting, not giving a clear answer of what the benefits of milk thistle might be. There have also been a couple of larger, randomized controlled trials which have been funded by the NIH. There was one like 2012 or something that was the NIDDK, if I can remember correctly, and it showed that 2 higher than usual doses of sort of the extract from milk thistle was no better than placebo for chronic hepatitis C. And there have been other studies which have been well designed. There was one other, I think, rigorously designed study that also showed no benefit. It was like a 2008 study or something like that on hepatitis C and long-term treatment against cirrhosis. So the good studies that you might find, unfortunately, are not really saying that milk thistle has a ton of benefit for, sort of helping with liver problems. That doesn't stop a lot of people from trying it. Side effects from milk thistle usually are like running along with potential allergies. And I think if I remember correctly, it also can lower your blood sugar. So it's of concern in people who have diabetes or might otherwise be worried about controlling their sugar. So too long didn't read answer here is that it's probably not going to protect your liver if you're drinking a ton. And you should probably talk to your doctor, definitely, about using it if you have any concerns about blood sugar or other issues in your health. Nathan Sketch, how can someone not trained in a medical field find research in the questions they have? You watch healthcare, you watch Healthcare Triage Live and you ask your questions. That's, of course, how you get those answers. You also ask, what is the hierarchy of study types? RCTs is the best down to the worst. So, this has been published a number of times, and I'm sure if I try to do it off the top of my head, I'll screw it up. But randomized controlled trials, other controlled trials, probably prospective cohort studies, retrospective cohort studies, case control studies, case series, anecdote. But those aren't always the same because you can, of course, have bad, you can have really good prospective cohort studies versus a bad prospective study. I'd rather have the really good prospective study. A well-designed randomized control, and of course there's even gradations of randomized controlled trial. Single-blinded, double-blinded, sometimes triple-blinded. Those rarely happen. So even in those. But how do you... This is a great question, and I keep trying. I'd love to write a book someday on sort of helping people to understand research themselves. Part of it is that it is reasonably complicated reading the medical literature and understand studies. I went to school a long time to do this. I joke with my kids all the time. I finished at about the 25th grade. So it is, there's a lot of work that has to go into understanding the nuances of research. That doesn't mean that the general public shouldn't read research studies. In fact, I have one of my future upcoming New York Times articles. We actually want, if we can, to show how I read a paper to sort of give people a better sense of how you would go through it. But there are books, I suppose. I don't know of any single book. The AMA and JAMA did a series on how to read the medical literature, but it's a little intense, and it's not the easiest thing to read. I've recommended in the past that David Sackett book on sort of clinical research. That's not bad, although again, it's a little bit complicated on evidence-based medicine. you could try to just read articles a lot and see if you get better at them. You could tweet at me, if you have a question. If people tweet questions at me, I do try to answer, especially if it's something I've addressed before. I can go look up a link and send it quite easily. And again, I'm not, I'm being half joking, half serious. Talk to people who you trust. We provide this show to give you a way to talk to someone that you hopefully trust about, medical research or questions that you might have. So that's what this is for. If you want to become better at it to the point where you trust your own answers, you probably need to train a bit to get up to it. Because even for healthcare professionals, it is often difficult to train and to read and understand the medical literature. Talia Merrill Kirk, are hydrogenated oils trans fat? If so, how can food labels list hydrogenated oils in their ingredients but claim to be trans fat free? Well, hydrogenated oils are the trans fat. What they discovered was that if they took the oils and they partially hydrogenated them, they became solid and they stored more easily. They didn't go bad so quickly, and they have a different mouth feel that people like. So they became very popular in foods. Of course, now people believe they're much more unhealthy. So the way that you can have hydrogenated oils in your ingredients but claim to be trans fat free, I think, is if you have less than, I think it's like half a gram of trans fat in your food, that's considered trans fat free by the FDA. So if you have 0.4 grams, and that's per serving. So if you have like 0.4 grams per serving, you can say you're trans fat free. Of course, when people eat 4 servings, then they're getting like 1.6 grams, and that would be more than it, but they only care about per serving. So technically, you can have, partially hydrogenated oils in your food, and if you have a low enough amount of them, you can claim that you're trans fat free even if you're not. So that's probably what is happening to you there. But to answer your first question quickly, are they trans fat? Absolutely. That's what they are. David Devine, getting rid of antibacterial components in soap because they promote resistance. Would it be useful to have or produce pro-bacterial components so as to reduce the production of resistant bacteria? So they're not, the antibacterial components in the soap probably weren't creating resistance because they were like chemical. They were just like killing everything. The problem was that they're just not healthy. And you got to promote some sort of health if there's a danger, and there's technically a danger. Maybe they weren't doing resistance. I'm not totally positive about that. We had an episode on it. You can go watch it. But would it be useful to have or produce pro-bacterial components? I don't know. I can't imagine how. Plus, we usually don't go around producing pro-bacterial components to make resistant bacteria. We just would rather a lot of the bad bacteria don't exist. And so I don't know how that would work. I've never seen any research looking into that. I have no idea. I'm having a hard time thinking about how the mechanism would work in my head. So I'm going to basically say no, unless someone proves me wrong. Vaibhav Gupta, you've done an episode on coffee. Now what can you tell us about tea? Oh, your timing is spectacular. I'm literally writing a piece for the New York Times now on tea. To complement the one on coffee. Well, not literally right this second, but before we film today and then later today when I go back and work, I'm going to be writing the piece on tea. It'll mirror somewhat what we're saying about coffee. I'm not going to get into it too much today. I would say not this Monday, but perhaps 2 Mondays from now, or 3 Mondays. Yeah, not this Monday, 2 weeks after that, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. I'm lost. No, I was actually thinking about the New Year, so it's, I don't know, how many Mondays from now is for the article. That will appear in the upshot, and, if you email me or tweet at me, I'll try to remember to tweet back at you to tell you what's up. We will then, of course, at some point in the future, do a healthcare triage episode on tea to follow it, but you'll get that very soon. So it's in the works. Kanchan says, I was told recently I should sit down because it's for digestion. This sounds like a lie, but I guess my friend saw it on a health show. Is there any research to say you shouldn't stand while eating? What health show did you see that on? I'd like to know. I'm betting that your friend lied. I have no idea. People I think mostly sit to eat because it's a communal thing. There probably is some truth to the idea, of course there is some truth to the idea that if you're physically active, you're drawing blood away from your gut And that, that's why people say they get cramps if they eat while they, too soon after they exercise. There's been some research on that. It's not totally proof positive one way or the other. Of course, there's no evidence about the swimming and the void, getting in the pool and all that crap. You don't have to wait 30 minutes after you eat to get in a pool. You just don't. But I don't know the answer to this. Should you sit down because it's for digestion? I think if you walk around and you're eating and you're fine, then who is your friend to tell you otherwise? If you walk around and it's making you feel sick, then by all means sit. No one is telling you gotta stand, but I don't know of anything that would say like there's a real great health reason to tell you should sit. On the other hand, it could be that some people derive a benefit. This is one of those that's so low risk. Do your N of 1 trial. If you're happy walking around and eating, go ahead. Digestion it's not like you're not going to get the food into your body. You'll get it. And so unless you're suffering from some sort of malnutrition, whatever you're doing is working. Adam Tajolker says, I've heard a lot of people talk recently about including good fats in their diet. Is there any evidence to support this? Well, sometimes people talk about, the good fat versus the bad fat with the trans fat versus the non-trans fat. A lot of people believe that the non-trans fat is better. There are a lot of people also that think that liquid fats are better than solid fats. There's a lot of conflicting evidence about that. It goes in both directions depending upon what you eat or what you're looking at. The point of the whole, issue is that you do need some fat in your diet. Fat helps with the absorption of some essential vitamins. And if you have no fat, it's harder to absorb those vitamins. And people who, aren't eating any fat at all can actually become somewhat vitamin deficient in certain vitamins, the fat vitamins. So you do need some fat. You need fat for other things too, just like you need cholesterol in your body. And there are reasons these things exist. And so, I think some people say you shouldn't eat too much fat, or you try not to eat the really unhealthy fats. And so the other fats that are left are good fats because some fat is necessary. So there is evidence to support the idea that you do need fat in your diet, some amount, and that some fats are better than others, which would make them the good fats. Michael Lafferty, I know your feelings towards vitamin D, but at our pediatrician's office, they kept asking us about a vitamin D supplement for a 1-month-old, and I don't see a need for it. What does the research say? Oh, this is when it gets off the rails. So I'm not anti-vitamin D. God knows we need vitamin D. You don't get vitamin D, you get rickets. It's terrible. And there are some children, especially babies, who because they're not breastfeeding well, or because they, however what they're consuming and it's winter, and because of certain, races and skin tone, they are more likely to get rickets and be vitamin D deficient. So there are babies who need vitamin D for a period at some time until they start drinking milk or until the weather changes and everything else. So it is possible that your pediatrician is correct that your 1-month-old might benefit from vitamin D supplementation. Having said that, we sometimes do overkill even in that respect. And so I can't answer. You got to talk to your pediatrician, and your pediatrician might even say, yes, you know what, you really don't need it, and I'm just going overkill. Or your pediatrician say, your child, for some reason, is at serious risk or greater than average risk for vitamin D deficiency in this acute period, and for that reason, we recommend vitamin D supplementation. That is a legitimate reason for vitamin D supplementation. The reason I go off on vitamin D all the time is because we say, hey, you know what? Some babies need vitamin D supplementation. Therefore, everyone must need vitamin D supplementation because it's going to cure everything in the world. And we keep debunking that over and over and over again. But just because something is bad over there doesn't mean it's not good over here. And for you and this explanation, it's possible the vitamin D is good. Talk to your pediatrician. Cat Life 333. Whoa, why do you live stream midday Wednesday? I know everybody wants to know the answer to this question. So the reason is because I've set up my schedule at work so that Wednesday is what I call my writing day. And I don't usually go to the office, and that's the day I really concentrate on writing papers, writing grants, writing manuscripts, writing anything else I got to get done, editing my junior faculty's grants, papers, and anything they need to get done. It's when I answer all the critical emails I've left alone. And so Wednesday is my day to do my stuff, and I don't go to the office, and that makes it a perfect day to film Healthcare Triage. And that's why we do it. It also seems to work for Stan and Mark's schedule, where we've made it work, and so that's why we do it Wednesdays. And when I lose my Wednesday because of travel or anything else, it's hard to sort of get away from my full-time job to come over here to do it. So it's just harder for us to do. We can't really do live any other day. Sometimes we can tape an episode if we need to. We squeeze it in at other times, but that's not nearly as much time as setting up the live version. And we need so many people to do live. You'd be shocked that it's really only possible Wednesday. Wednesday is my writing day. There you go. Midnight SG, is it true that some styles of front-facing baby carriers can damage or strain the baby's hips? Some of the more expensive carriers claim to be more ergonomic and better for their joints. Thoughts? My God. There's just not an epidemic of people walking around with their hips damaged because they were in baby seats. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I bet if their claims of being more ergonomic and better for their joints are unsubstantiated by randomized controlled trials. And we can leave it at that. No, we won't leave it at that, by God. No, so I just can't imagine that this is something that's been studied in details. And so I don't even know how this is true. It is totally true that probably the car carrier seats of like the 50s were very uncomfortable and not built the same way. And the ones made today are probably better. But, you know, the ones that were made today versus 5 years ago versus 10 years ago, there just isn't going to be, you know, any kind of major differences. Plus, why are your babies in car seats and car carriers so much that you're worried about the ergonomic strain? They should be out and laying and playing and doing stuff and learning to roll over. You don't want to keep your baby in a car carrier seat so much that you're worried about how ergonomic it is and how much their joints are. So I would bet that the vast majority of car seats on the market today have met whatever guidelines we all agree are important, and that those that are making claims to be more ergonomic and better for the joints haven't been truly studied to show that there's improvement in joint development through the use of their carriers in randomized controlled trials. And if I'm wrong, show me the data. I'll do an episode just on that. Lord Marcus. Hi, Dr. Carroll. With obesity being such a problem, can you discuss the various bariatric surgery options, their efficacy, and who'd be a good candidate to approach their doctor about surgery? Yeah, I this was one where it's like I can't touch this on live. I would, maybe we need to do an episode on this. Part of the problem is that I have no idea how old you are. And I have no idea what your issues are, your health issues, how heavy you are, how obese you are, what your BMI is. And the differences would be very different for a 30-year-old versus a 15-year-old. And there's a lot of conflict these days about, who should get bariatric surgery, how well does it work, how much does everything coupled along with it work, and it is absolutely, positively something you should be discussing with your healthcare professional and not asking me on Healthcare Triage. Because I can't possibly answer that for you cleanly enough to do it quickly on the show. So I wish I had better answers for you, but I don't think that there's enough consensus for me to give you a short answer, and you should probably talk about that with your doctor. Neil Leffler, what can actually help prevent migraines? Everybody seems to have a secret remedy, from drinking water, which you're really tired of hearing, to eating more cherries. I haven't heard the cherries one. So it depends. Look, if your migraines are pretty, you can see this is where I'm moving again into sort of healthcare advice. But if you have pretty severe migraines, there are some medications that can be used to help prevent them. There are preventive medications. You should talk to your doctor because maybe one of them is appropriate for you. Otherwise, the other thing people will do is if you can figure out your trigger, and some people have different triggers. When I was a kid, I used to get really bad migraines from nitrates in foods, hot dogs. I used to call them wheat brain headaches because I don't know why. It felt like wheat was growing in my head, or crops, and it hurt so much. And I knew if I ate a hot dog, I'd get a migraine. That was my trigger. I avoided hot dogs and other foods, and luckily I outgrew it because hot dogs are delicious. These days I avoid hot dogs for other reasons. They're not so healthy. Although the Hebrew National totally fat-free ones are pretty. What am I talking about? Hot dogs. Anyway, preventing migraines. Avoid your triggers. Don't do the stuff that gives you a migraine, and talk to your doctor about perhaps trying a medication or some other preventive measure. But there are them. You don't have to go to like folklore of cherries. If you have severe migraines, talk to your doctor. Mina Kral, I've been taught that calcium prevents iron absorption, yet I've recently seen studies claiming that this is not so with long-term absorption. Do you know if these studies hold water? So here's the thing. It's two different things. Does calcium theoretically prevent iron absorption? I believe the answer to that at a molecular level or a level you can measure in a lab is yes. Is it such a difference that it makes a difference in people clinically? And studies showed there the answer looks to be no. And so both sides are correct. It's the same idea of like coffee being a diuretic. Does coffee increase the amount of urine you put out in the short term, the caffeine? Yes. Does your body really correct for it quite quickly so that you really don't become dehydrated? Yes. So both people are correct. In this way, calcium can be interfering with the absorption of iron that can be measured by a very sophisticated test, but probably not so in any way that would matter clinically or in real life. So that's how both sides can be true. So yes, the studies hold water. Most people don't think these days that having calcium is somehow preventing you or causing you iron deficiency in a clinical sense. A few more questions before the end here. Cara Galante, I have Ehlers Danlos syndrome and I'm on morphine oral liquid. What are some long-term effects of opiate use that I need to watch out for? I already have problems with gastric motility. That's one. Addiction, huge issues. We actually want to do an entire series on opiates for healthcare triage. We've actually applied for funding to try to get that done. And it's such a complicated, long thing question that I'm going to defer this and say, we're going to wait and do this real. So Cara Galante, keep watching Healthcare Triage. At some point in the near future, we hope to do like a 4-week series specifically on opiates. Maybe it'll help with answer some of your questions because I can't possibly do it justice in a few seconds here on Healthcare Triage Live. Jared Mitchell, hey Dr. Carroll, I started ramping up on my usage of a standing desk, though my roommate has said that an excess of standing can lead to back problems. Is this true? Oh man. Yeah, yes. It's like look, everything has benefits and harms. If you exercise, you are more likely to probably cause yourself an injury in a muscle than if you sit all day. Does that mean that you should not exercise? No, because the chance, the unhealthy downsides of not exercising are worse than that statistically significant chance of perhaps injuring yourself while you exercise. I would say the same thing is here. Is it possible that an excess of standing could lead you to develop some back pain? Probably. So at that point you should do is rest. But I would say that the improvements in not sitting all the time are good and maybe outweigh the benefit that you might see from sitting. Plus, when you're talking about back problems, can it cause some back strain or muscles? Yeah. If you're talking about like slip disc or fractures and stuff like that, I'm not sure there's real evidence of that. So I would say that someone who tells you, hey, don't use a standing desk because it statistically increases the chance that you might have some back pain is trying to be a spoilsport and is looking for an excuse for you not to use your standing desk. You make your own decision. Do whatever you think is best for you. If you find that you use a standing desk and it's causing you some back strain, you might need to let up a bit and sit for a bit. That's totally fine. Find what works for you. Joanne Duffy, last question. Hey, I was the person who last week... Oh, no! Hey, I was the person last week who asked about Downs Syndrome and Alzheimer's. And I'm not upset you're asking. I'm upset that I never looked and I forgot. How should I go about giving you a bit more background on my experience with relatives? You've got to tweet at me because I'm not trying to just get people to follow me on Twitter, but that's how I will remember while I'm sitting at a computer. I'll be working and I'll get your tweet and I'll go, oh my God, I owe that person an answer, and I will immediately look it up and do it. The problem is I won't remember otherwise. And so I would love to look this up and figure it out. To recap, last week, Joanne Duffy kindly asked about, Alzheimer's and Down syndrome. And I was like, I don't know if there's much work on this because people until recently might not have been living with Down syndrome long enough to get to actually where they could develop Alzheimer's. I don't know if it's more likely, less likely, or anything about it. And I told her I was going to look it up and I totally forgot. And now I need to do it again. Please send me a tweet so I don't forget to do it again, Joanne. I really, really apologize. Thank you for watching. Keep coming back and poking me with a stick until I get this right. That'll do it. We thank you for watching. Check out our social media. Once again, Monday from this week will go up next week. So next week will be IUD myths, and the week after that will be another great episode. This Friday, I'm going to be discussing a really interesting and horrifying study about how we treat kids with appendicitis who have pain and whether there are racial disparities. Links for next week's show will be in the description soon. Check out the facebook.com/healthcare triage page. Check out the Reddit site. Go buy our merch at dba.com. Is it DFTBA.com? What is it? How do you get there? HCTmerch.com. That's how you do it. HCTmerch.com. We haven't been promoting our merch as much. There's a mug. The poster's not up. And of course, patreon.com/healthcare triage. We really appreciate your support. All of the banging you didn't hear today is due to patrons supporting Healthcare Triage. We will not be here next week for Healthcare Triage Live because it's Yom Kippur and I will be celebrating. We will be back, however, the week after that. Have a great week. Happy New Year to all of our Jewish viewers because Rosh Hashanah was earlier this week. And we'll see you soon. Thanks for watching.